Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tano's the Human, and welcome to this special Games Guide edition of Total War. Today, we're going to look at how you can change the names of your characters, because some characters are named better than others. Obviously, the Roman factions are quite well named. If we want to go and assassinate Captain Tertius over here, well, that name kind of makes sense for the Romans. But particularly when I've done my Slavic campaign, I've had quite a lot of comments telling me that the names aren't really all that accurate. All sorts of names here which aren't traditionally Slavic, and actually it is quite simple to change those around in the game files. So that's what we're going to look at today. How can you change a few of them, and indeed how can you change the whole list of names, because we want to make this as authentic as possible. If all you're looking to do is change around the characters you start the game as, then we want to head into the desk_strat file. That will be inside the data folder, but we're looking at Barbarian Invasion, so we're going to head into here first. We'll go inside data, down to world, maps, campaign. This will be Imperial campaign if you're in the normal Rome Total War file, and then we will head into this one here, desk_strat. Naturally, as I'm looking up the Slavs, this is my slightly edited version of this particular file, but you can do this same job for whichever faction it is you're looking at. So we're going to search down for our faction, the Slavs, and down here what we'll find is the one character that I originally put in here, who is Gunthermund. Now, we want to change that name over to something a little bit more Slavic. So let's go with Borislav to start us off with. And presumably, once you've done that, you'd have yourself this character name in the game. So let's set it up and see what happens. Here we are then as the Slavs, and you can see they are an available option up here. And if we start the... Nope. So yes, as you may have noticed, that didn't work. The game's kind of crashing because it isn't expecting this name to come up. So we can change this, but that isn't the only change we need to do. To make all the changes we want, we're going to head back into the data file. So if we head back into data, then we will find that there are a few different files we need to be changing. Further down here, you have this little file here, deska_names. This is the first of two important documents we're going to have to change. This file is fairly self-explanatory. You have yourself a simple list of factions followed by the character names which can be used to fit with them. So if we head down to the Slavs, we'll be able to find the list of names associated with the Slav faction, which is great. And if you want, you can just take a name out of here, put it in desk_strat, and obviously the game will be able to run once more. And that's obviously where I got Gunthermund from. I took him out of the pile here and I put him into the other file. Now, you'll notice this is in alphabetical order. We don't strictly need to follow that. That's really only there for the devs to find it useful. It's just an easy way for them to reference it. So you can go and add in your names in alphabetical order if you want, or you can add them at the bottom. I do tend to like put them at the bottom because then you can always see whatever changes you make. So here we are. Borislav has been added in. We'll save that up. And we've got to do this in one more file. Now, it's easy to think that you want to look in this file here, desk_names lookup, but as it suggests, it is actually just a lookup file. The game itself doesn't use this at all. What we want to instead do is scroll back up the data file and into this subfolder here, text. Inside here is this little file here. This is the other one we need to change. It is names.txt. This file can be a little bit more confusing simply because of the formatting style and also because it hasn't got clear lists of these are for which faction, etc. Got all sorts of names mixed up here, Gundabad, Nir, Gnaeus, and you'll notice it isn't just alphabetical order, it'll start all over again. It's seemingly kind of random. I would say the best way of adding into this file is just to scroll down to the bottom. Now, you've got all these change marks here. I'm just going to go right down under this name, Aksunga, and I'm going to add in Borislav here. So make sure that you keep the same formatting. This is a very, very fiddly file, and you will find lots of errors can come with it pretty easily. So I'm just going to give you that warning now. Borislav, make sure you spell your name correct. That will help. And just to give you a reference point, it's always worth having a look. So you've got one tab space in between these here. So I've got one tab space here. I'm going to save this up, and this time we should be able to load up the game and for it to run. Here we are once again then with the Slavs, and this time if we press start the campaign, it will indeed load. The name Borislav now exists. The game is happy to get us going. So if we click into our city here, you'll notice we've got Borislav. The name has carried forward into the game and it's happy for us to get going. However, you might want to do more than just change your starting leaders, because of course you're still going to end up with this. We're still going to start picking up all sorts of other family members and other chaps with all sorts of names. So if we want to change the whole list altogether, it's going to be a slightly bigger job. So let's go back into the files and let's see how you can do a little bit more editing. In order to change the whole list of names, I'm going to have to gather a list. Luckily, on my Unlocking the Slavs video, someone provided just such a list. So a big thank out to Ivica Armanas, who provided a long list of Slavic names, which I'm going to use for my example here. If you do have any complaints about the names not being Slavic, throw the complaints back to him. But no, in all seriousness, thank you very much. That certainly helps this video, and it's nice to have ourselves some slightly more accurate Slavic names. Back inside desk_names then, and now we can go and change around this list of Slavic names. Now we've already seen if you just want to add the odd little name in, as we did earlier with Borislav, the game is happy to accept it. Where it gets more complicated though is when you start taking whole lists of characters and you start deleting them. So what we're going to do, we're going to delete this out here, but I will warn you now, I'll very much warn you that there's a good chance that you're going to have problems when you do this. Although that being said, it's certainly been easier with the Slavs than it's been for the Britons in Rome Total War, and I'll get to that example after this one. So with the Slavs, this works quite nicely. I add in the names here and the game is happy to accept it. So I'm going to save this up and I'm going to head into the other file. Back into the names file then, and this one is the much more complicated one, because we start adding in names here, we're going to have to do a whole lot of, well, a whole lot of editing. So a few bits of advice. I would probably suggest if you start by just writing them out on the left here, I would then suggest that you copy it and paste it across like that. That is going to be by far the easiest way of you doing this, because you don't want to get a spelling mistake causing you problems as you, well, write it all the way across. Especially if you've got all these names, there's a good chance you make a small error. So it's going to be a bit laborious if you do want a wholesale change of names, but eventually you'll be able to get them all sorted out. So with my whole list done now, I am able to save this up and hopefully load the game with it all working. This time when we do it, we should find that there aren't any problems and all of these names will now appear up. But as I said, there are a lot of potential mistakes to go on here, and you really need to be careful about your formatting, your spelling, just missing the odd bracket here or there. It's going to be laborious work if you want to do this, but you can get it to work. The game is just a little bit fiddly. So let's save up and let's reload the game. Let's load up the Slavs for one final time then, and hopefully, fingers crossed, good. There are no problems as we load it up. It means we haven't made a mistake, which is nice to see, because it can get frustrating when you have problems. So Borislav here, we are going to abandon, become a horde, just because it's going to create us a whole new set of generals. So who do we have here? Ah, good old Radomir. Radomir over there. We have Captain Nesislav over there. Randoslav. Borislav himself, of course. And let's have a look who else we got. Good old Volk at the back there. Of course, anyone else you create, any odd captains, are going to pick up these names as well. So Captain Molkan. The game is now going to be picking out that new list of names we've picked. And if you want to have yourself a more authentic experience, particularly as a faction like the Slavs who aren't really properly bulked out in the game, then this might be a good idea for you to follow. Obviously it does involve a fair bit of work, but in this particular occasion, if you want to do it as the Slavs, I will be posting that list of names in the comments below. That should make it a little bit easier for you. So I mentioned that the Slavs are one of the easier factions to try and create a whole new list of names for. Now, any faction is pretty simple if you want to add one or two in. When I started designing this particular campaign here, my new King Arthur campaign, when I simply put Arthur in and his father Uther and his old brother Kai, it was all quite simple because I was just adding in a few names at a time. The game is quite happy with that. But if you're going to overhaul the whole list of names, and more than anything else, start deleting names, then you start coming up with problems. I'll show you what I mean. As I said, the Slavs was a nice easy example. We had one name to change and that kind of showed the principle of it. But in reality, most factions are going to have a lot more going on in this file. So let's head down to the Britons. This is a virgin version of the file. I've just copied and pasted my copy so that we can start afresh here. So we have the faction leader, Balivendos. Now, if we want to change him over to Uther, we need to just bear in mind his connection with the other characters. So we have all the other characters along here, but down the bottom is the family tree in the record. So what we want to make sure we do is change Balivendos over here to Uther as well. Make sure you correct yourself the formatting, which seems to be 2 tabs in between each of these, and then it's 1 tab before the end part there. So if I want to change that character Benevendos, I need to change it down here in the family tree as well. So as I go through all of this, it can start getting very complicated. So let's go and add Arthur in. So we've got Arthur there, the factionaire. Now, if I want to add him in, I've got to pick one of these. Now, this is actually his wife, Barita. So we want to ignore her and move on to these three. So we're replacing Belenus with Arthur. So let's go and put him in there and go and paste that in. Now, of course, you can do that for all of the children there, but it's also worth bearing in mind Belenus pops up along here too, because he's an adult with his own sort of family tree. So we'll have to change Arthur down here. And I've got his wife, Carta Menunda. That was a terrible pronunciation, but I'm going to stick with it. Now you can see up here, she's also represented in this area here. She's female, 31, never a leader. She's still alive. So if we want to, we can change that name there, but we've got to, again, make it match between the different places that the names pop up. So just be careful with whichever changes you make. You really don't want to leave any little bits wrong here, or you're going to have a lot of problems. Most factions, if you want to change around the names, you're going to have to play around a lot. So if you are going to do this, be very systematic. Take one name out at a time, replace it with all of its other names where they are needed. Eventually then you'll have done enough editing to have yourself all of your new names in here. So I've got Robin and Lancelot, Madoc, Cador, Conan, Merlin Kai, and of course I've changed all the names down here. New wives, Guinevere, are matched with the wives up here. So once you've done all of this and you have all those lists of names, obviously you'll want to go and do what we just did with the Slavic particular example. And we want to go and put all those names in. But for Britons, it's nowhere near as simple, sadly. Adding in names is all quite simple. Indeed, adding in a big chunk of names shouldn't have too many problems apart from the formatting. It's when you start getting rid of names where you can really fall into problems. And the problem with the Britons is that not all of these names are shared with the Gauls. In theory, at least, you simply want to delete any name from here and also delete it in the names.txt file. But you must remember that they are slightly different files and they serve different purposes. The other file, the names.txt, that sits in the text file, that one is simply a list of all the different names. So if we get rid of Ainarin over here, we don't need to get rid of it from the other file because it still needs to exist in there for the Gauls. Now you'll probably notice that the Britons and the Gauls here have an almost identical set of names, and they are almost certainly the same pretty much across the board, but you do need to look out for just those few different names. There's one here, Cunfoir, which exists solely for the Britons. So if we want to delete this whole list here, we don't need to worry about taking most of these names out of the other file. In fact, we explicitly want to leave them all in the names file because they need to exist there for the Gauls. But one we do need to get rid of is this one here, Cunfoir, because this one only exists for the Britons. So if you're going to do this, if you're going to change the whole list of names over, you're going to have to figure out which are the unique names, because once you delete them from here, you're going to have to also delete them from the other file. In the end, I've had the unique names here end up in my files anyway, partly because I started to have problems when I tried to delete them. It might be I was making a little mistake, but you might find that a bit of compromise is easier. I've decided to leave these in the end. It doesn't make too much of a difference. They're not particularly inaccurate names anyway. But just for you to bear in mind that you might well find that it's a little bit difficult when you try and change all of these names around. The Slavs was really easy. The Britons was a lot of work. I spent many hours trying to set this one up. In the end, these were unique names that I just decided to keep in. But as you scroll down, you might well notice that we come to the surnames. I didn't actually look at surnames with the Slavs. I kind of kept it simple. I found surnames can be a little bit more awkward. You do need to be a bit more careful when it comes to the formatting. Just obviously look at the formatting around for examples. I added a few in, but in general I decided to keep it fairly simple. And indeed, you do have the women's name down the bottom. I've just got a few of them. Just make sure your formatting's all right, and in the end, you'll be able to get it all to work. So let's load up the game then, and let's see our final result. Naturally, the result of all that editing can be seen on my new King Arthur roleplay series, where obviously we've got Uther, his wife Igurna, we've got Kai, Arthur, his wife Guinevere, and his son Mordred. It is nice if you want to go and do a bit of role play to create your whole list of names. It won't necessarily be simple. The Slavs certainly is much simpler than the Britons has been, but if you want to do an overhaul, it is certainly possible. Just you've got to be a little bit patient with it. There we are. If you just want to change one or two names here or there for the starting peoples, it's very easy to do indeed. What started as quite a simple little short video, I thought, has turned out to be many hours of hard labour setting up this series. But I hope it's all been worth it. It should be a fun series, and hopefully you can have a bit of fun at home with it too, be it with the Slavs, be it with the Britons like this, or with any particular other factions. Just remember to make sure to find out which are the unique names for that factions. That's really the main stumbling block. But anyway, for now I will leave you. I'm Thomas, this is To Nerds to Human, and this has been a game's guide to names in Rome Total War. Thank you and goodbye. Shoot the flames of death into their eyes. Oh no, we're gonna die! Coward, 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 coward. Stop, sir! You're supposed to die! Run away, run away, run away, run away, run away! Our ballistas can actually shoot our own gates. Okay, let's get on with this battle. Run away.